All right, so we'll just let you all know that we are recording these sessions. As we go through today's topic, if you have questions, please type in the Q&A area. We do have someone dedicated to answering the questions in there. If it's something I missed or something that's worth interrupting, that person will interrupt the session and ask the question. If there's anything at the end, of course, we can open it to Q&A, and we will also answer those questions directly if need be. So today we're going to go over using rubrics inside your Canvas shell. So I'm going to go ahead and share my little sandbox. Steve, can you see my sandbox?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So inside your course, on down the left-hand side, this is a relatively new thing, is in your course navigation, you have the option to see rubrics right here as part of your navigation. That's a new update. It just came in this summer. So if you click rubrics, you'll notice in the URL, you are now at instructure.com/courses, and then this is your course ID, and then rubrics. So here are all the rubrics that I've built and most of these I just do in training, so that's why they have horrible names. Please don't leave them that name. Name them something more succinct and something you can remember. But you'll see all the list of the rubrics that you've created for this course here inside this list. You can jump over here to the right-hand side and say add rubric and quickly build a rubric right here that you can then later use to attach to an assignment that you might have. So we're not going to build inside this area. I just want to show you that it exists, but you can build your rubrics in here. So we'll act like we're building an assignment. And we're going to attach a rubric. So whenever you're attaching a rubric to something, you want to go ahead and have your assignment build. And the rubric's one of the last steps you take. So when you click on your assignment, you've got all this stuff filled out. And you can see down here, this is where your rubric will be. If you've not put a rubric on the assignment, then you will see this plus rubric button here. So again, this assignment's already built. I've already filled out all the settings and the things that I needed for this assignment, put in directions, that kind of thing. And after I've done that and I've saved it, then I can add the rubric to it. So in Canvas, you can add rubrics to assignments and you can add rubrics to quizzes. But it is important to note that rubrics attached to quizzes are more like an FYI or you're just kind of gauging the students on certain things, but it does not affect the grade. Quiz grades are specifically calculated via the questions and how much those questions are worth. So, but in an assignment, you can add a rubric and it will affect the grade, and I'll show you that. So we're going to go ahead and add a rubric, and we're going to create our first rubric for an assignment. So if I click plus rubric, you'll get this basic template here. The first step is to name it something other than some rubric. So we're going to call this one my testing rubric. And here, the first thing listed here is criteria. And what this means is like your grading criteria. So if you're, grading a paper and you want to grade, specifically, on punctuation, you'll have a line for punctuation, or a line for grammar, or a line for, consciousness of thought, or whatever the different topics that you want to grade on. And so these will be your criteria. Here are your ratings. And they start off with 0 to 5, and this is, just the default. And so each row that you have will be worth a total number of points, which you can see down here on the right-hand side. And as you add more rows, this total points here will change, and it'll change based off of what you add. Now, there's nothing in the rubric, guidelines that say that all of your rows have to be worth the same points. So you don't have to have 5 rows at 5 points apiece to make something worth 25 points. It can be whatever you want. One of the key things to note is that it needs to add up to the points that you've made the assignment worth if you're going to use the rubric for grading. If it doesn't, you'll get this warning message when you go to save the rubric that tells you your points don't add up. So for this example, I'm just going to go ahead and we're going to create our first criteria. So I'm just going to edit this. And I'm going to call it something. And you can put in a longer description here and update your criteria. So now you can see the title and then the longer description below it. And that's what this pencil icon allows you to do, is to edit that at any time. The trash can, obviously, that gets rid of this entire row. So then I have my point scale here. And if I want to fill this point scale out, let's say I want it to be up to 10 points. I hit the little pencil icon and we put in 10 points here, and we're going to call that, we're going to leave it called full mark, and we can give them a description. Let's just do something nice. Okay, so you have full marks, which is the title, and then the description below. And you can fill out everything in between. So when we hit plus, it jumps right in the middle. So between 10 and 0 is 5, and so that's where it goes. So I could say 9, and I'm just going to put in something. And so now you see I got 10, 9. Well, then I got to hit the plus again, and we can do 8. 8. And I got to hit the plus again, and then we do 7. Now, this is if you want to fill out your entire row, and we can go 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, all the way down to 0. And you can do this for all of these just by hitting the plus marks and keep going and going and going and get all the numbers in there that you want. You don't have to do that. There are several things we can do, and I'll show you those here in a second. But I do want you to know is if you build this rubric all the way out, it's important for you to be able to give them a 9 and tell them that a 9 is a good job, but whatever. Or it's important that you give them a 7 and you have some feedback. And this is crucial for providing feedback. If to fill out this entire row, to have numbers for each thing and information for each thing. You definitely don't want to give them an 8 and then have nothing in the box like I do. See, like this just has 8. You want to give them feedback to let them know, good job, or they did pretty good, or maybe they did pretty lousy. Whatever kind of feedback you actually want to give them, it's definitely this is an opportunity to give that. And if you fill this all out, and I'm going to go ahead and just do this real quick. So I'm going to just keep going just for the sake of argument down to 5. And like I said, you can keep going all the way down to 0. But if I spend all this time building this one row, one of the great updates of the rubrics is you don't have to do it again for the next grading criteria. You can actually duplicate it. So here underneath criterion, I need to add yet another grading criteria. When I click it, I have 2 options that show up. I can either create a new one from scratch, and if I'm going to use, say the next one's only worth 5 points, I'm not going to do a full 10, maybe I do want to create it from scratch. But if all of them are, the next one's also worth 10 points, and I've taken the time to fill out 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and I put in feedback in each one, and it took me a good couple of minutes, now I can duplicate it. So if I say duplicate something, I can do version 2.0 and create that criteria. And now you can see it here, and it's duplicated all the things I've already done. So this saves you a ton of time. So if you really work out the first row, you can just duplicate them one after the other, and it won't take you as much time anymore to fill all this out. So that's a great way when you have an assignment worth 50 or 100 points, and you can still really get in depth with each of the grading criteria and the feedback available to the students. So if I get rid of this one, and I were to choose a new criteria, it would look exactly like we did before. So I'm going to say this is my new one. Scratch. And if I create it, it's going to look like the other one did with 5 and 0, and there's my total marks. And you can start over. Maybe this row is going to be worth 20 points as opposed to 10 on the previous one. So that's why you would use a new one instead of duplicating the old one. But duplication will save you a lot of time. So I'm going to go ahead and just create another duplicate of the something. And so now I'm up to 25 points. So if, for example, on one row, or maybe you just don't want to do this, you don't want to go through the trouble of doing 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Now, I highly recommend that you do go through flushing it all out because it is an excellent chance for feedback to the students. But let's say something is a little more obvious and you don't want to flush the whole row out, but you still want 5 points here. You can click this little button called range. So if I click range, you'll notice that this says 5 to 0, and this one's just worth 0 points. So if I wanted a little better range than that, then I could create a range. So let's edit the 5, and let's say it's actually going to be worth 10 points. And I want it to go from 10 to, let's say, 7, and update that. And then I want to add one in between that goes from 7 to 4. And we'll say that's just okay. And so now I've got 10 to 7, 7 to 4, and 4 to 0. Now, the only reason that you create these even range boxes is because of the information that you type in here. Again, it's a chance for feedback. Otherwise, when you go into actually doing the grading, when you click on this box, it is just going to give them the high-end points. It's going to give them the 7 if you click on OK. Or if you click on full marks, it's going to give them a 10. Inside the grading, though, you can type whatever number you want here in the box. Or you can click on the box. And we'll get to the Speedgrader here in just a second. So let's say we've chosen our rows. We've flushed this out. We've got it all set. Notice mine's only worth 30, so I need to go ahead and make this worth 50. So I'm just going to some rows here so that I can make it worth the total 50 points. Okay, so now my rubric is worth 50, and I want to come down here to these settings. This whole time we've done this to add up to the points, so I want to use this for grading. So this is most likely the option you're going to choose for almost all your rubrics. So I'm going to check this box that says use this for grading. And normally now I'm done with my rubric, I'm going to create the rubric. But I did want to show you some other options here. The only one that you'll probably use in the class is if you chose to remove points from this rubric. The only reason you would use this option is, let's say you've created this rubric for a different assignment and you want to grade with it, so now you've got points on it. But now you're creating like a rough draft, right, assignment. And you've got the full rubric that you're going to use on the final draft, but you're really not assigning grades for the rough draft. So you can remove the points, and then it becomes like an FYI kind of rubric. You're gauging the student where they're at in the rubric, but you're not actually using it for a grade. You're just doing it for an assessment. And then that's a great way to do it for like a rough draft, so they don't get the points for it. But that's just so you know what that is. Most of the time, you're going to use this last option to use it for grading. So here, I'm going to click Create Rubric. And because the numbers matched, I didn't get any warnings that they were different. My total points matches my total points that I've said the assignment's worth, so that's good. And I'm looking at my rubric. Now, if you notice somewhere in this rubric that you've done something wrong, you can always click the pencil icon and edit the rubric. And if you just don't like the rubric at all and you want to start over, you can, of course, trash the rubric. All right. So to just show you what this looks like, I'm going to open Speedgrader. When it comes time to grade, let's get something with a submission in here. Say you're grading a paper. You can grab these, see these little 3 dots on the gray bar here? You can grab this and drag it over, and that's important because when you click View Rubric, it pops the rubric out here, and you may not be able to see the whole rubric. So once you've done all your annotations or whatever you're doing on the assignment, it's time to actually do the grading. You can drag this over, and you can see the boxes here. Now I can click on a box, and it'll be worth 9 points. Or I can click on my range, and that's worth 10 points. So if I want to give them 10, 10, 10, and 10, and then I save the rubric, you can see they get a total of 50. Now, that's important because when we did the ranges, this says 10 to 7, but when you actually choose the box, it gives them the high end of the points. So you can always come down here to the other side and type in whatever points you want to give them. So even though I've chosen 10 to 7, what I really want to give them is an 8. So I can scroll down here and change this to an 8 and save my rubric. And so now you'll notice they have a 48. And you can do that for any row. So you can go through and click on boxes, or you could just type in 7 and it'll update the highlighted box for you. Again, that's just a choice whether you want to click on boxes or type in a score. Here you'll have this little bubble icon, and this is another way yet to provide feedback for the students. So let's say you did not flesh out these like I didn't. Now you would have the opportunity to type in by hand specifically why you gave them a 7 on this row. And again, it's just more opportunity for feedback for the students. Okay, so once you hit save, and it is very important to hit save, it does not automatically update the grade. You need to click save on these rubrics. Once you click save, you'll see that you have a summary of what you've chosen as, you know, for each row. And once you see this, you can click right and go to the next student and view that rubric. And then it becomes a rinse and repeat. Mark the boxes or type in the grades, provide feedback if you want. You can also, and then come down here and hit save. Once you hit save down here, you also have the ability to add a comment to the overall assignment. So instead of adding feedback per row on the rubric, you could provide just a general feedback to the assignment. So there are multiple ways you can provide feedback to students while using rubrics. Okay. So we're back to assignments and we have our rubric here. So let's say, for example, that you went into the rubrics navigation item and you created your rubrics in there. And so now, let me just show you real quick that once I created that rubric, here in rubrics, you'll see all of the ones that you've created for this course, right? So I'm going to go back to assignments and say I've created my rubrics in there. And now I'm going to my assignment for the first time. And I want to add that rubric that I created. Or maybe I created that rubric last semester. So I click plus rubric. And instead of creating the rubric here over again, once you've created a rubric once, it's saved. So I can go find rubric. And then I can scroll through all the different rubrics that I have in different courses. So like for this course, I can click on the sandbox, which is the course I was in. And I can look for whatever rubric I want to use. So maybe I'll choose that one. And we can pick, and we can manage rubrics, which will jump us to that other page. But once I've chosen the one I want, you scroll down and you say, use this rubric. And since we'll no longer be using SLOs this way in Canvas come fall, I'm going to edit this rubric and I'm going to get rid of my old outcome by deleting it. And I'm going to say we're going to use this for grading and update the rubric. Now, here's that warning that lets me know that my rubric is only worth so many points that does not add up to the points for my assignment. You can choose to leave them different, but if you're going to use this for grading and you check that box, it's a bad idea. So you want to hit change. And oops, I clicked on the wrong button. You hit change and it opens this back up and you can create new criteria to where it'll add up to the 50 points that you want it to. And so you just keep going, editing this rubric to get it where you need to be. Okay. So I'm going to cancel.
Where they could each be worth 25 points.
Sure, I could edit these rows and change this to 25 and save. And this one, same thing. Update. And then I could, choose range. And there's my 25 to 0 if I wanted to, and update. So we could leave it this way. We can not change it. So I'm just going to cancel this one and get rid of it. Okay. So you can add rubrics to quizzes, and I'm just going to briefly show you that. Again, remember that adding a rubric to a quiz is more of a for your benefit kind of thing. It does not affect the grade for the quiz, but you still can fill it out. So when you come into your quiz and you click on the quiz that you want to add a rubric to, when you click these three dots over here, you can see the option that says show rubric. When you say show rubric, it means you already have one, so show me what that is. So let me get rid of it. And if I click on the three dots and open it up again, now there's nothing there. So I can, of course, add the rubric. I could create it from scratch like we did a second ago, or I could find a rubric that I've already created and attach it. So I'm going to just create this rubric. And then when you go to Speedgrader for a quiz, let's find someone who want to take this quiz. All right, so someone took the quiz there. So notice they only got a 1 out of 8. If I say view rubric and I give them a 5 and save, notice the score didn't change. It's still a 1 out of 8. But when they go back and review their grade, they'll be able to see that you marked them a certain thing on a rubric. Okay. So again, rubrics show up in the navigation now. You can't hide this. You can, of course, edit your navigation and choose not to show this, but you can create all your rubrics inside this little subsection that they have now, or you can add the rubrics directly to any assignment or any quiz that you want to, and utilize the rubric inside Speedgrader. When a student looks at their own grade, they will have a small icon that looks like a little grid, or it looks like a little clipboard. And then when they click on that icon, it'll open the rubric and show them how you filled out the rubric for their grade and the student perspective. So rubrics is a fairly quick and painless topic. So we won't take up all the time today. So I know we're ending a little early on this, but like I said, it's quick and painless, but I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
Since the grade doesn't affect the quiz, but yet you have points on the rubric row, wouldn't it? How does that relate? I suppose maybe that's the best way to put that.
Right. So don't think of them as points when it comes to a quiz rubric. Think of them more of as a scale. So overall, in the entire quiz, you could type in comprehension, and you could tell them overall, I think your comprehension was a 7. And this might be more a depth to if you're doing like reading comprehension inside the quiz, like you had them read an article and now you're quizzing them on the article. Or if you're using questions that are essay questions, like you give them a nice thick set of instructions where you actually give them a story, and then the last part of that is to answer, write an essay about how they feel about the story or whatever. Then those kind of things lead more to using a scale to evaluate your students. If it's just a multiple choice quiz, then chances are you're not using a rubric. So
it acts a little bit like a Likert scale. Is it possible to have it say percentages instead of points? Students, I'm afraid that students are going to say gee, this doesn't make sense. My rubric points are different from my actual grade.
Sure. And again, this is just, this is a scale, you're telling them how they're doing on a scale of 1 to 10 kind of thing. Or you could always check this box to remove the points and use the feedback as your scale. And, you could put anything from great job to you need to reread chapter 2, in the feedback.
Yeah, that makes much more sense for a quiz. Someone says, is it correct that I have to modify a rubric already created, assigned in the specific assignment? I can't modify when I go to the rubrics tab. I think she means, what if I get one from my listing or my bank of rubrics and want to edit it within the quiz? Does it edit the original?
It does. Right. So if you have a rubric that you created previously, and then you go into an assignment and you want to attach it. So I'm going to go to plus rubric, and then I'm going to find the rubric, and I'm just going to pick this one for the sake of argument. If I were just to edit this right here and then make some changes, do some things, put in a 4 and do this, and then I say update rubric, notice it doesn't just say save anymore. It says update rubric. So it will overwrite your original rubric. So
it'll overwrite the original rubric within my rubric bank, for lack of a better term. What would you call that?
Yeah, the navigation item, yeah.
Say that again, would it?
Yes.
Okay.
So I'm going to update this rubric here. I don't think I have it actually this isn't from my class, so let me do. So see, now I've created a new one because I changed the name in here. So here's assignment rubric 2.0. So if I go to assignments, let's open that same assignment again. And I can see it here. If I edit this, and I'm going to edit the number 4, and I'm going to say, nice job. And I'm going to update that rating, and I'm going to do that. I'm going to say update this rubric.
If I didn't change the name and it updated it there, and I was using that rubric in several assignments, it's going to change them in every one of those assignments.
Yes, I'll be honest, I haven't tested that yet. I haven't used the same rubric over multiple assignments, but in theory, yes, it's like a library item. So this rubric would be updated. It should update downstream. Let's try it.
So if I wanted to make kind of a base plug rubric that has kind of the same stuff basically that I use on all my other rubrics, and I add it to an assignment, I just need to make certain that after I finished it, I change the title of it so that it recreates it. So maybe I have a row that I want to reuse. I see that it says find outcomes there. Can you do it that way? How does that work? The find outcomes below.
We will no longer be using outcomes in rubrics and Canvas, so you will no longer use this option.
So that's not adding a second rubric that's in the library.
No. This is SLOs. Okay. And we won't be using these anymore.
Is it possible to add a second rubric that's in the library below this one?
No, you can only have one rubric per assignment.
Okay.
So let's go back. I added a 2.0 in this rubric, and look what it did. It added a 1 at the end. So now if I go back to rubrics, no. So it looks like it won't update all your rubrics. It'll create a new one.
That's a good fail-safe.
Same rubric on multiple assignments, and you edit one of the assignments, it'll create a second rubric. It won't update them all.
Good.
So let's try it. Let's try it the other way, though. If I have rubric 2.0 on this assignment, and then I'm going to go into this one, I'm going to get rid of this one, and I'm going to put rubric 2.0 on this one. Find sandbox Rubric 2.0. So use this rubric. Okay, so now I have 2.0 on both assignments. If I go into rubrics and I go to 2.0, oh, look, I can't. So because
once you've assigned it to something, you cannot change it within the rubrics library. That was just.
Yeah, so definitely because I'm on multiple assignments, it won't let me edit it.
Yes, it's to keep you from altering a grade where you've already graded.
That's correct.
Very Canvas sort of thing. The feedback, I think you answered this question, but like you said, once you grade a row, you do have the ability to add a long explanation or feedback there. So as I can see here, you've got longer explanations of each rating. They can be quite long, can't they?
They can be.
And students see these things. Can you look at a student view and show us what it looks like?
Sure. So before I do that real quick, because this rubric is now only on one other assignment, just one, I now have the ability to edit it. But the moment I attach it to a second assignment, that edit goes away, so I can't mess up multiple assignments. So yeah, let me open and go back to assignments. And let me put some feedback in for one particular student here. So if I pick, okay, so for this assignment, I'm going to click my rubric and I'm going to give them a 5. And, you know, there is the feedback we already built in to this number, as well as I could always hit the bubble icon and give even more feedback.
Let's see that.
So if I want to, let me move this out of the way. If I go view rubric and I've given them a 5 and it tells them, you know, whatever feedback I want to give them, I can also hit this and say second layer of feedback and save it.
And that's separate from the comments at the very bottom, which is overall.
Right, and then the stuff at the bottom is for everyone. So if I'm gonna go in as this student and go to the grades for this particular student, and if I want to look up that particular assignment, you can see here that they have several icons associated with this assignment. And so I'll just show you real quick. The double bubble is comments, and that was the one at the bottom of Speedgrader. That's this one down here, these assigned comments, where I've done like an overall feedback to the student for that assignment. So that's the double bubble. And then I have this icon with a check in it, a box with a check mark. This is the histograph for the class. This tells them where they scored. So they scored a 5 out of 50. And then the average score for the class is a 12.1, which is this line here. So it shows them how they scored compared to the class. And then the last icon is this clipboard icon, which shows them, whoa, that jumped, which shows them the rubric. And so they can see that I marked them a 5, and there's that long explanation. And then the second layer of feedback also shows right here.